Good afternoon. I'm Angelica Spanos, and this is the Law and Crime Report, where we are diving into true crime and all legal stories making headlines today. A jury reached a verdict in Brandon Willie Martin's murder trial. The former Major League Baseball prospect was convicted of triple murder in California. A jury recommends life in prison for Martin. Martin was arrested in 2015. He was convicted in the murders of his disabled father, his uncle, and an ADT alarm installer at their family home. This is a really interesting and complicated case. We want to get to the verdict. Play that for you right
now. He woke me up from my sleep, and he just came straight over to my bed, and I was like, Brandon, what's wrong? It wasn't usual for him to come over, on such a late time during the night. And he was scared. He didn't know what was wrong, but he knew something was wrong. And he couldn't go back to the home in Eagle Glen. And I just told him to come over to the bed, to the side of the bed there, and just sit with me. And I just held him in my arms. And I just held him to tell him it was going to be okay.
And unfortunately, it was not okay. Is that right?
No, it wasn't.
Now your son, Brandon, he's essentially out of your life now, right after that verdict last week? Question now, punishment. What do you want this jury to know when they're deciding whether to vote for life without parole or vote for execution?
First, I want you to know how sorry I am that Brandon has this brain disorder.
Objection.
We wouldn't wish that about anybody.
Objection, Melanie.
What do you want him to know about Brandon and you and how this affects you? If Brandon was to be executed, how would that affect you?
I've had so much loss, so much death. It's so profound. I do not want to lose another member of my family. It would be a dagger in my heart.
All right, so that was actually the defendant's mom there, and as you can see, she is very, very emotional. Her victim impact statement there being very powerful. That was during the penalty phase of the trial. She's the remaining members of his family, and all of them were present at the trial. But this being really, really key here. I want to intro our guests right now with us today. We have Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator, as well as Gene Rossi, law and crime legal analyst. Joseph, you know this trial. You know that we found out that he used a baseball bat here to kill the members of his family. Talk a little bit about the nature of this from a forensic perspective for us.
It's horribly brutal. This is what we refer to as massive blunt force trauma in the deaths of all of these. And what's particularly interesting to me, this guy is a professional level baseball player. He is using essentially a tool of his trade. So this kicks it up to a different level. This is completely different than, say, someone like me who is, I know nothing of baseball, enjoy watching it, but me picking up a baseball bat and wielding it, he selected an object that he was very familiar with and delivered a tremendous amount of force upon each one of these individuals and just bludgeoned them to death. It's a horribly brutal way to die. So in my mind, he had the ability to kind of make a judgment here. I think it goes back to this idea of menis rea, and that's been one of the biggest contentions in this case all the way along.
All right. And Gene, we know that the jury recommended a life in prison sentence for him. He also could have gotten the death penalty, I believe. What do you think of that in his sentence?
Well, I'm going to compare this case to a case that was in Virginia a few years ago. A man was 24 years old, young man, and he got the death penalty. It was reversed. And people who watched the trial, followed the trial, said the reason he got the death penalty, is when his mother testified in the penalty phase, she showed no emotion for the defendant. None. This is the opposite, 180 degrees different. This defendant, Mr. Brandon Willie Martin, he owes his life to his mom. There is no doubt in my mind that her testimony overwhelmed the emotions of the jury. And I don't know what the vote was for life, but I can tell you, well, it must have been unanimous. I can tell you this, her testimony was the reason he is not getting the death penalty. That was extremely powerful, very powerful.
That's really interesting that you bring that up, because obviously we just heard the mom, her testimony, as you said, so powerful, so emotional. She wasn't the only family member to testify during the penalty phase. His brother also testified, and we want to play you that. So let's listen to that.
How does your brother look today?
Not good.
Does he look different than in the picture that you're looking at?
Yes.
Does he look more similar to the way you saw him at that Eagle Glen residence?
Yeah. Yes.
What's the difference? What's the change?
Between this picture and then?
Yeah.
The happiness, the confidence, the competitiveness. Yeah. Those things, I think, are major keystones to who we are as people. Me and my brother, growing up very confident in ourselves, very competitive. And I think that's what drove us to be successful in sports. And so seeing that gone from him was just like, it was just a blow, huge blow. He was just like, Sean, they're talking so clearly, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. And at this time, our grandparents are dead. And so I knew at that moment it wasn't good at all.
And when you reacted the way you did, what was your brother's reaction to you?
Probably laughed or just stayed silent.
And you knew that there was something wrong at that point.
What I categorized it to, because I remember this like it was yesterday, it was like a scary movie. You go into a situation and you just feel the vibes. You're like, this isn't going to turn out good. This isn't going to turn out good. I knew it from that moment on. And I tried to do as best as I could to help, but it was to no avail.
And your brother wasn't kidding when he was talking about hearing these voices.
He was dead serious.
He was dead serious?
Yeah.
Did he seem surprised that you didn't hear it?
Yeah, he was like, what do you mean? And at that moment, because the person I am, I'm a very, I guess, investigative type person. So I went straight to Google. I went straight online and I looked up hearing voices causes. And I, from that moment on, have been studying everything from that point on.
When you got home, did you tell your mom and your dad what had happened?
Yes.
And what was their reaction?
Not surprised.
All right. So that, again, was the defendant's brother. He mentions that Martin at one point had been hearing voices and was obviously not exactly mentally stable. We did learn that he had a drug problem and that he eventually was diagnosed as a schizophrenic. So, Joseph, when you hear these types of things and you hear the nature of this crime and how horrific it was, throwing in the mental health part of this, how does that kind of shake out with this with the penalty phase and with obviously the verdict here on his sentence?
For me, I think that, relative to his mental status at the time, he was able to make some decisions and put forth thought in what he was doing. Let's keep in mind that after he beat these people to death, He went rifling through their pockets, took their cell phones. I think he took a set of keys and that sort of thing, and tried to make good his escape from the scene. So that gives us an indication that, I talked about it a couple of days ago on air, that he's not necessarily having active hallucinations where he's thinking that there are pink elephants everywhere. And I know that there's a huge spectrum here that can be talked about, but as far as being, obviously stark raving mad, that's not necessarily the case, and there are varying degrees.
All right, Joseph, thank you. Gene, I got one last question for you before we go to our break here. We do know that in this case, as we talked about the psychologist part about this, one of the things that the defense said was that the defendant would be better off not on death row because of the treatment he'd be able to seek for his mental health. What do you think of that, and how does that play into crimes like this when we're talking about sentencing when mental health is a factor, Gene?
One of the things in a death penalty case, and I've never tried one, but I've definitely watched a lot, is when you sentence this defendant, is there any redeeming value to his life? That's the central question that the jury has to ask. I don't care if there's no jury instruction. Is there a redeeming value to this person? Is there reason why we have to save his life? And I can tell you this, the jury was probably saying that, yes, we found him guilty. We found that he had the requisite intent. But this individual has serious mental health issues, and he's not worthy of the death penalty, maybe in prison, where he will have no chance of getting out. Maybe in prison, this man can be saved in terms of his mental health. I'll guarantee you that the defense attorneys are putting on things that the prisons can offer. There's a federal prison called Butner in North Carolina that provides mental health treatment and extra care for prisoners. They're probably asking, is there something that can be provided to maybe make his life as productive as possible, even though he's serving life? They are thinking that, guaranteed.
All right, Gene Rossi, Joseph Scott Morgan, thank you both. We're taking a break right now. When we come back, we'll switch gears, talk about our new live trial. Stay with us here on the Law and Crime Report. And welcome back to the Law and Crime Report. We are now going to switch gears and talk about our new trial. We are in the midst of Erica Stefanko's trial out of Ohio. Stefanko is charged in connection with the murder of Ashley Biggs, an ex-girlfriend of her ex-husband, who's already serving a lifetime prison sentence for her killing. Stefanko is accused of making a pizza delivery call that lured the victim to a business where she was then killed. Prosecutors say that Erica worked alongside her ex-husband, Chad Cobb, here. One of the key witnesses on the stand was the lead detective in this case. Let's listen to Detective Mike Hitchens.
Were you aware of the stature or size of Chad Cobb?
After I seen him, yes.
And he's a rather large fellow, is true?
Yeah, I believe he's like 6'2", yeah, over 200 pounds, I believe.
And as the investigation progressed, particularly as we heard there was a lot of evidence located at his property that had what appeared to be blood on it, did he appear to be the person of most interest to you?
Yes.
Okay. And as a detective, were you thinking that this crime at this point was committed solely or committed by a female?
I don't know. We believe that Chad was the perpetrator who actually committed the actual homicide himself.
All right. And to this day, that is still your belief?
Yes.
All right. However, did you also consider the possibilities of him having assistance?
Yes, I did.
And what was it about this crime that made you believe that there was assistance given?
When we learned that a female had made the call for the pizza, You know, obviously we had to look in that direction as well.
And if he drove the vehicle away, how did he get there?
Well, somebody else would have had to drop him off.
And when he dropped her car off in the field, were you wondering, or was it a concern to you as to how he then got to where he ended up?
You know, I was thinking that someone picked him up at the field at that point too.
So based on those things, you were looking for possible other suspects?
Correct.
Being that it was a female voice, who did you think might have been involved?
At the time,
Overruled.
at the time, we believed it may have been his wife, Erica Lyon.
All right. And in fact, she was found with him hiding behind the bar.
That is correct.
All right. So again, this is the lead detective that's on the stand during this. Gene, I heard you during this clip say that you interjected and said that should be an objection when you heard his testimony. What were you talking about there?
Well, it proved my point. The judge should not have allowed that. You cannot allow the detective or the investigator to take from the jury the decision and say, I think Gene Rossi committed the murder. Okay? We don't care what you think. You are there to testify about facts, interviews, non-hearsay evidence, hearsay with exceptions. I don't care about your opinion. That's for experts and medical examiners, all right? And what happened was, then he said, I thought she was involved. The defense attorney objected, and he got hoisted by his own petard, okay? And it was overruled. So he got to say, I think she was involved. That's objectionable, period.
All right. Thank you, Gene. We're going to play more from this. And then, of course, we got more to talk about. Let's listen.
And did you try and monitor the Facebook pages related to, associated with Erica Lyon?
I did.
All right. And how did you know they were Erica Lyon?
You get on Facebook, you can do a search. I found pictures of her that has her name on it at the top of the page. And then there are pictures of her kids and her family and stuff there.
All right. And was she making posts?
Yes.
And was there one post that you found that was somewhat interesting?
You could say that, yes.
And what was, if to the best of your knowledge, when was that post?
It was after the homicide was committed.
All right. Now, were you able to date the post and determine when she posted it?
The exact day, no.
All right. When did you find it?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on the bottom of the page, I think it's sometime.
Well, let me show you.
Take a look.
I'll show you what it marked as State's Exhibit number 122.
It was 10/15 of 2012.
So October of 2012. So
Correct.
that would have been about 4 months from the time that Ashley was murdered, but several months yet before Chad had pled.
That's correct.
So I'm going to show you 122. And what is that?
It's what you call a meme.
And who is that in the picture?
O.J. Simpson.
And what do you know about O.J. Simpson?
He committed a homicide in California.
Well, did he?
I believe so.
What was he legally?
What's that?
Legally, he was found.
He was found guilty.
He was O.J. Simpson.
What are you asking? Sorry.
O.J. Simpson was found guilty of murder.
Exactly. If it was, I'd have to go back and look at it. It's been a
Okay,
while.
you don't remember? Okay. But what does it say on the meme with O.J. Simpson smirking?
Your Honor, am I allowed to read the whole thing?
Yes, you can.
Okay. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one.
Was there any explanation with that post?
No, it was just a meme posted on Facebook.
All right, so we have some discussion about a meme about O.J. Simpson here in this testimony. This is interesting because I'm curious, Gene, if you think this kind of undermines the credibility of this witness here when he doesn't really know what happened and what the outcome of O.J. Simpson's trial was.
Well, I'm amused by that because if you don't know that O.J. Simpson was acquitted in the most famous murder trial in the last 100 years, you must be on another planet. He was found liable in a civil case for wrongful death. That's what happened. But I want to focus. I want to focus on the meme. That's not a good thing for the defendant. And even though it was 4 months after the alleged murder of Ashley Biggs, you don't joke about something like that. And that shows a callous and uncompassionate heart. And I was just thinking about the stepdaughter who I think testified earlier this week that said that the defendant would make her eat dog feces as punishment. And I'm starting to build this vision of the defendant. If I'm a juror, that's not very kind to her. This meme is very bad, I think. It's not a home run. It just corroborates and adds to the narrative.
Absolutely. Joseph, I want to get your take on this investigator, because this guy, being what he is, you know, the lead investigator here, he's not coming off as I guess, as professional as we'd think, right?
Yeah, and you know, he's the lead investigator, so that means that he's kind of, I don't know, a good way to put it in this parlance is that he is the quarterback of the team. He's directing all aspects of the investigation moving forward. And you have to have self-awareness, and you have to have awareness of the environment and the waters in which you swim. And that covers everything. That's not just the crime scene itself. That's left to, you know, forensic guys like me. But you also have to have an awareness of the behavior patterns of all of the peripherals that are involved, and specifically people that you have targeted in the investigation, thinking that they may have something to do with it. So you have to be self-aware in all of these circumstances.
Right. All right. Joseph Scott Morgan, Gene Rossi, thank you both for joining us today. That is all for us today on the Law and Crime Report. Coming up, we'll be back to our regular programming. Stay with us here on Law and Crime as we have more coverage of Erica Stefanko's trial out of Ohio.